Hello and welcome back. Well, I've been busy making a wooden train and I was cutting out these wheels for the train on this scroll saw here. Now I've borrowed this scroll saw from one of the more senior members of the wood turning club, but I had a bit of a boo-boo, and this is the adjusting screw which fits down the back here, and that fell apart on me. Now, to be honest, I did notice a crack in it before it broke. So it's probably only a matter of time before it did fall apart. Anyway, I had to carry on with the project, so I had to come up with some ingenious way in doing the adjustment. So this is what I did. Yep, a pair of locking pliers. That'll work. Beautiful. Now that did work for a couple of the wheels, but then it broke again, and I think what's happened is the thread has got stripped inside the machine here. I really need this scroll saw running again, so in this video we're going to fix it. I'll start by pulling it apart. I've taken off the table, and this is a cowling cover, just a couple of screws in there, comes apart, and I can't help it, I have to play with the off-center doodacky thing there. I didn't show it all on camera, but if you're pulling one of these things apart, there is a bunch of screws all around the outside. And you also have to lift up these labels on the top. On this particular model, there's 4 bolts that hold these halves onto the base. So 2 bolts for each half, and there's some nuts underneath that need to be loosened off. You don't have to take them out, you just need to loosen them off, then you can pull the sides apart. Now this one was a little bit tight on the pins here, so these are the pivoting pins for the arms. They have some bushes in here. So just make sure that, unlike me where I had one arm come off in one half and the other arm come off in the other half, I had to use a punch to make sure that both arms stayed in one of the halves. And also be aware, if the machine does have a light on it, there's probably a cable that will be connected, and you just got to be careful not to break it. This is the culprit here, and I suspect that the thread is stripped in here. But I need to get this bracket off first. So that allows me to get the top out, and of course I can't get the bottom out because there's a bracket there as well. Once the part is removed, you can see where the thread is stripped, and I've unwound the nut a bit, so it seems to be stripping more of the thread. So there's only one way to deal with that, and that is to I finished removing the nut. This is the bottom one, and the rod just spins around in there, and this is the one with the thread in it. Here's the butchered one, and I've got this piece of 8mm round bar which I could use, although I would have to cut the back of the arms out a little bit wider to fit the round bar in there. And I don't really want to do that, because if I weaken the arms and they break, then we're pretty much poked. Now the smart viewers would have noticed that when I took that nut off, I was winding it the opposite way. And that's because this bar has a left-handed thread on it. So now that sort of complicates things. The way I see it, I have 3 options. Option 1 is to turn the left-handed thread on the lathe. But if that nut is also stripped, I'm going to have to make a nut with a left-handed thread. Now, fortunately, I do have some left-handed taps. I've got a 16, 12, 10. But this is a M6 left-handed thread, and that's a tap I don't have. Option 2, make a tap. Well, that's going to be a lot of work, and I don't have any heat treating equipment or facilities here, so I think that one's struck off the list. And option 3 is to make another rod like this, but put a right-handed thread on it. Now that sounds like the best option, but there is one problem with that. And that is, I'm going to have to deal with this. So the adjustment here was righty-tighty, lefty-loosey, but if I'm going to use a right-hand thread, then it's going to be lefty-tighty, righty-loosey. And I have to say, the owner of this saw is over 80 years old, so I don't know if that's a good idea or not. So I'm going to have to deal with that later. First up, I need to make a little triangle piece like this with a M6 thread in it. And you wouldn't believe it, I found this piece of dovetail that was an offcut from a previous project, and it has the right angle, and with some cutting other bits away, I'll be able to use this. First of all, I need to make a hole. This is a 5mm drill bit. And I need to put a thread in the hole, which is M6. I'm using the grinder to follow the original dovetail on this side. But on the other side, I have to do this one from scratch. So I'm trying to get the right angle here. Now I just need to clean up the little area here where the thread came through. So I do that with the angle grinder. I mark the item to length, and then that is cut off. So there's the new piece at the bottom, and that looks pretty good. Our stainless steel all thread screws on there nicely. I mark the length that I want, and you can see here I've added a little bit extra. You can always cut a piece off, but it's harder to weld something on. So that's cut off to the length I want. I put the other triangle piece on, and a nut and a lock nut goes on after that. Now, if any of my genius viewers have worked out what I'm doing, you are to be congratulated and pat yourself on the back. Now I fit the blade to the machine because I need the arms in the correct position for adjustment. Then I wind this little nut here to get the right adjustment. The arm's taken out and I mark where that nut is. Then I wind down the nylock nut, and that's locked on to the first nut. So here I am testing the mechanism for tension, and hang on, I'm turning that clockwise. How is this even possible? That's a right-handed thread, and it's tightening the blade up when I turn it clockwise. Well, as I said, for my genius viewers, pat yourself on the back. For everyone else, this is what you call Hogwarts dark magic. Thanks for watching. Just kidding, I'll explain what I did. So originally we had the threaded piece here, so it's the left-handed thread, and then as I turn this round clockwise, it pushed this triangle piece down, which pulled these arms together, which tension the blade. Now if we put a right-handed thread in here, then when I wind it down, the triangle pieces will be pushed apart, and that would loosen the blade at the front. So here's the secret. I did not put any thread in this top one. That's the floating one. The thread's actually in the bottom one. And that is a right angle thread, so when that bar is turned clockwise, it goes down and pulls these two triangles together and tensions that blade at the front. So, not magic, just a different way of doing it. And the good thing is, I don't have to change that label on the top of the machine for which way to tension the blade. Now that the mechanism is fixed, I'm going to make a handle, and I'm going to use some aluminium. This is home cast aluminium. I cut a taper in this part here. This is just for aesthetics. Once that's done, I polish it up with some sandpaper. Now I drill and tap out for a M6 thread. I need to drill a cross hole here for the handle, so I'm using the center finder in the mill. Then I drill a 9.5mm hole and come back through with a reamer. This is the handle piece, and that is taken down to 10mm. I part that off with my homemade spring parting tool, and I'll also part off the other piece. I have a video on the spring parting tool if you're interested in seeing how that was made. The handle is tapped in, and it's like a little T handle. I cut the thread down to the right length. Then I test it on the machine just to make sure that it's not going to interfere with the light. I don't want this to come off, so I'm using a bit of Loctite on here. The handle is wound on, and then the lock nut is tightened up against it. When I was putting it together, I noticed that this piece that holds the blade is crooked, so I'll straighten that up as well. I also noticed that there's some washer or something missing from here. So when this is tightened up, we're just asking for this plastic piece to be broken off. So I quickly make a washer that fits in there, and that strengthens this up nice and strong. Here I'm setting the table perpendicular with the blade, and I'm using a square for that. Now this is a test. What we do is we cut in, flip the wood over, and then cut in again next to that line. And these lines should be parallel if the table is perpendicular with the blade. I use a bit of super glue and activator to reattach these stickers. Then I get back into cutting up my train wheels, and I have to say that this saw is a lot quieter now. The new handle is just so much better than the old one. It's a lot easier to turn. Well, there you go, Dick. Your scroll saw's all back together and humming along beautifully. I've seen a few videos on YouTube where this stripped thread is quite a common problem. So if you're having similar issues, then that's probably a place to check. Anyway, I hope everyone has a great day. And once again, thanks for watching.